Okay, everyone is ready. We'll go ahead and get started here. Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another iVET360 COVID-19 HR Town Hall. My name is Heather Romano. I'm the Managing Director of HR and Training for iVET360. And today I am joined by Laura Alarcon, our Senior HR and Training Manager, who's going to be answering questions in the control panel on the side of your screen. So feel free to ask any questions. Laura will try to get through as many of them as she can. Be sure that you ask any questions in the questions panel, as we are not going to be able to see raised hands or chat messages. So today, I'm going to be very briefly discussing updates on the Paycheck Protection Plan. And then we're also going to touch briefly on how to begin to prepare after COVID-19. I know that this is something that was discussed on our last call, so I'm going to expand on that a little bit. And then also, we're going to finish up with some questions and answers. So because of the fact that there haven't been a whole lot of developments lately and pretty much legislation has kind of calmed down, I think this is going to be a shorter webinar. So let's go ahead and jump in. So we'll start with the Paycheck Protection Plan. So as I'm sure all of you know, the initial Paycheck Protection Plan funds were depleted very, very quickly. So on April 24th, the president signed a $484 billion bill that provides additional COVID-19 relief to amend the CARES Act. And this is going to include $310 billion for a Paycheck Protection Plan replenishment. And then there's $60 billion set aside specifically for smaller lending institutions. And so these are going to be your credit unions and your community banks. Now, unfortunately, they are expecting the burn rate for this to be even higher than the initial round of funding. So they're thinking they're going to run out of money even faster than they did with the initial round. So what does this mean for your practice? You might fall into one of these four categories. Number one, maybe you have applied and been approved, or perhaps even been funded. Remember that you are only approved when you get your SBA loan number, not just the approval from your bank. This is really important. There was a lot of coverage in the news about people who were told they were approved for a certain amount of money, and then they were told that they were approved for a substantially lower amount of money. And in large part, this was because they were basing their approval expectations on what the bank told them they should be eligible for before they got that SBA loan number, which is the final confirmation of approval. So if you have gotten your SBA loan number, it means you're approved, you're going to be funded, you don't need to worry about the rest of the Paycheck Protection Plan stuff we're going to talk about here. If you don't have your SBA loan number, I would highly recommend checking in with your loan officer just to see where things stand. That individual is going to be probably your most knowledgeable person to help you get through this process. Now, if you have applied, but you're waiting for approval, you may be in the queue for the next round of funding. If you weren't already approved, that means that you are not going to get funds from the initial round of funding, but you might be in the queue for the next round. So just like for the applied and approved, but waiting for an SBA loan number, be sure that you're staying in really frequent contact with your loan officer. I recommend just annoying them because yes, their job is very difficult right now, but their job is to be there to help you. And so they're going to be the ones who are going to tell you exactly what's going to be needed for you to get approved. And if they request any additional documents, don't wait. Literally drop what you are doing and get those things to them as soon as possible, because even a day's worth of delay could be enough time to miss this round of funding. And I don't want you to miss this round. So be sure you get any requested information to your loan officer or your bank as soon as they request it from you. And then lastly here, if you're in the process of applying, you are probably not going to end up getting funded in this round. They're expecting, like I said, to run out of money really quickly. So if you are in need of a Paycheck Protection Plan loan, be sure to apply as soon as possible. They are anticipating yet another round of funding, but there's no timeline on it. There's no funding amount on it. And so you're going to want to get in the queue as soon as possible to make sure that if you don't get anything from this round, you get what you need from the next round. And then the last quarter category is that you're just not planning to apply, in which case you don't need to worry about any of these things. So a quick little summary. Whether you have been funded or approved or you're waiting to even apply, what we really strongly recommend you do and continue to do is review and manage your costs, especially your cost of goods and your payroll, because these are going to be the easiest ones for you to control. They're also your largest expenses. So this is where you can really make a big difference in your revenue and cash flow. So we have a whole bunch of links up here for you that you can go to for additional information. We're offering a lot of our tools at no charge right now because we at iVET360 feel it's important to support your hospital and our industry right now. So we have our cost of goods and labor tracking tool, and it is at covid19.ivet360.com/expense-tracking/. So this helps you to monitor your cost of goods and your labor and see where you can make cuts when possible. We're also offering 3 months of our Pulse dashboard, which gives you a really in-depth look at your operational data. This you can access at covid19.ivet360.com/ and just click to activate the 3 months of free Pulse dashboard. We're also going to be having a town hall with analytics manager Lindsay Rudder. She has not released the day and time of that yet, but if you want, we can send you an email to let you know when we are going to be doing that. And then we also have some additional tips on what you can do now that the Paycheck Protection Plan funds are gone. If you go to covid19.ivet360.com, you can go to the full link that's here, which I'm not going to read out, but you can click on any of the links that are on that page to get additional information about what you can do to manage your expenses while we are waiting for funds. So now let's talk about thinking beyond COVID-19. And I know this might sound a little bit premature, but if you don't start planning now on how to integrate your practice back into whatever normal is going to look like, you're going to end up falling behind a lot of your competitors in your area. So a lot of us are really blindsided by this whole pandemic situation, but it's really imperative for all animal hospitals to start thinking about how they are going to bring their employees back, how they're going to open their doors back up to clients, how they're going to end or maybe expand curbside service. So from cross-training to career planning, we want to give you some ideas on how to get started. Now, you might find that there's a lag between when restrictions are lifted and when clients are going to be returning as normal. The problem is that we are having to bring our teams back in order to be in compliance with the Paycheck Protection Plan so that we can have our loans forgiven. So we have a few ideas here on how you can help the team have things to do and still be engaged while they're waiting for clients to come in. So what I really want to focus on today is engaging the team. We have a lot of teams who have been kind of working in this surreal curbside practice environment. And then we have a lot of team members that have just been sitting at home really bored or educating their children or dealing with sick family members. And so all of them are going to have a lot on their minds, and it's all going to be different situations for each one. So we need to get them all re-engaged in what they're supposed to be doing on a day-to-day basis at the practice. So to get them re-engaged, we are recommending some of the following here. Number one, we recommend creating goals and helping them achieve their goals. Goals are one of the greatest ways to get people engaged in their jobs because it requires a commitment from them. The goals don't have to be huge or overarching. They can be small. They can be, learn how to draw blood. It can be learn how to enter a computer or a client into the computer. These don't have to be huge things, but just things to get the team to focus on them. Because of the fact that some hospitals are going to be slower right now, this is a good time to kind of pile on the goals and to get them as educated as you can so that when you have more clients coming in, your team is even more valuable. We're also recommending starting performing one-on-ones or getting caught up on performance evaluations. When the HR and training team is talking to our client hospitals, we find that performance evaluations are one of those things that kind of get thrown to the wayside when we get too busy. And sometimes that's maybe not intentional, but it's definitely a choice that we're making. We're choosing to take care of other things as opposed to take care of our employees. So if your hospital is a little bit slow right now, we would recommend getting at least caught up on your performance evaluations, but really starting some one-on-ones. We recommend having monthly one-on-ones with every employee in your hospital. If you are a large hospital, and by large I mean more than 15 or 20 employees, you can have your supervisors do most of these and then have practice owner or practice manager sit in on maybe one per employee per quarter. But the nice thing about these is that they can help to rebuild the bond between leadership and the team, and it can help them to create goals and development plans. And so this is a great way for you to communicate their progress and their goals and talk about how we're going to help them to continue to develop their skills. We also recommend offering online training to the team. There are a couple of different platforms out there. One of them is learningvet.com, which is our platform. We offer extensive microlearning based on client service, communication, marketing, supervisor skills courses, and a lot more. And we're going to be releasing a much more robust platform in July that will have a full performance management system in there as well. And then we also recommend at Dove if you're looking for clinical training. As far as clinical medicine, at Dove is considered one of the leaders in the country. And so your team is going to get the best training for clinical things like placing IV catheters, how to assist in surgery, how to clean instruments, how to make instrument packs from something like at Dove. Offering training to your team can give them something really meaningful to focus on, especially if client flow starts off a little bit slow. A lot of times hospital owners and practice managers are wondering, what on earth am I going to have these really bored people doing during this time? If all of the cleaning in the hospital has been done, which is always, I always say if it's an animal hospital, there's always something that can be done. But if everything has been done, or if people are really tired of scrubbing baseboards, then get them onto some online training so that, again, they can be even more valuable and helpful once the clients start coming in again. And we mentioned this last time, but we are also, in addition to our 3-month trial of our Pulse dashboard, we are also offering a 3-day trial of our LearningVet platform. So as I mentioned, this contains so many courses on client service, team communication, supervisor skills. And so if you're interested in this, you can just go to learningvet.com and click activate, or you can send an email to hello@learningvet.com and say, I'd like to activate a 3-day trial, and then we'll go ahead and get it started for you. I know we've had a couple of emails kind of get lost because we've had such a response here. So if you don't hear back from us within 24 hours, just send us another email. Sometimes they go to junk, or sometimes they get kind of piled down to the bottom of the pile. So now let's talk about some more frequently asked questions that we've gotten over the past week. Many of the questions about the FFCRA have been answered in prior webinars, but as I mentioned before, please do feel free to type any questions in the questions bar in your webinar dashboard, and Laura's going to answer as many as she can. But these are some of the more frequent ones that we've gotten recently now that hospitals are inviting employees back to the workplace. So number one, I have employees who are still too concerned to return to work. How will that affect my Paycheck Protection Plan loan forgiveness? Unfortunately, employees who do not return from paid leave will affect, or paid or unpaid leave, will affect your Paycheck Protection Plan loan forgiveness. So if you have 10 employees and 5 of them don't come back from their paid or unpaid leave, that's going to affect your payroll numbers, and that's going to affect whether or not you can get that loan forgiveness through the SBA. Now, our understanding is that the loan forgiveness is going to be based on full-time employees. We recommend making sure that that is the case through your loan provider. just to make sure that you are doing the right thing for your practice. So we have a couple of options here. Number one, we can mandate they return or they resign. So you can say the practice is open, we are inviting you to come back to the practice. If they say, I don't want to come back for whatever reason, you can say, well, then I will accept that as your resignation. Be sure that you don't say that they are terminated, because if they're terminated, then they're going to be able to continue to collect unemployment. And some individuals who don't want to come back, that's the reason they don't want to come back. And that is a misuse of unemployment. So make sure that if they don't want to come back, you get that written saying, I do not want to return, and make sure that you tell them that I'm accepting this as your resignation. The other option that you have is if you are a very, very generous practice owner or practice manager, and you think, you know what, I don't want to force anybody to come back if they're not comfortable, then you can hire another individual, temporary or full-time. There are so many people who are unemployed right now, even in the veterinary field, which frankly is weathering this much better than the vast majority of other industries out there. But there are still a lot of people who are looking for at least some hours. And so that could be a way of getting your payroll numbers up if you've got a lot of people out on unpaid leave. I don't recommend doing this if you're paying people to be on leave, though. If you're paying for the FFCRA childcare leave, I would not recommend doing this. Or if you've got people out on large amounts of PTO that they're using for what would otherwise be unpaid leave, I would recommend recalling those individuals instead. The next question. My practice manager has been working from home recently due to a fear of COVID-19. This is really affecting morale. What exactly can I do? So, as is often the case with employee situations, this really depends on your specific situation. Now, in some cases, you can mandate the manager to come back to the office or risk disciplinary action. In some states, employees are specifically allowed to stay on unpaid leave if they are afraid to return to work. So make sure that you know your state laws. In general, those are very few and far between. I believe that New Jersey was one of the states that had a law like that. So just make sure that you know your specific state laws before you mandate anybody come back. Now, OSHA states that employees can refuse to come to work if the employee has a specific fear of infection that is based on fact. So this can't just be a generalized fear of, I don't want to leave my house because I don't want to catch COVID-19. It has to be something along the lines of, our hospital sanitation procedures are so poor that it is very likely I will contract COVID-19 while at the workplace. Now, if you are providing personal protection equipment such as gloves, face masks, that kind of thing, and if you have good disinfection protocols in place, then the employees should not have any reasonable fear of coming back to the workplace. Now, if you cannot address that specific fear, so let's say they say, they're not requiring face masks, we don't have any face masks, I don't want to go to work at a place that has a face mask, then that individual can, in fact, stay home. But if you are providing all of that, which I am under the impression that the vast majority of animal hospitals are, then you are providing a safe working environment. And so you can mandate those individuals come back or tell them that they can resign. The Americans with Disabilities Act may also be a consideration if the manager is immunocompromised or otherwise more likely to be infected than the average employee. Now, the EEOC's guidelines on COVID-19 and the ADA notes that accommodations may include changes to the work environment to reduce contact with others. This can include things like plexiglass separators, which we're all seeing at our grocery stores now, or other barriers between workstations. So what we would really strongly recommend is that the employee be asked to provide a list of requested accommodations from their doctor. And this wording is really, really important. You want to tell them, that's fine, but I need you to go to your doctor with your job description and bring me back a list of requested accommodations. Don't say required accommodations or anything like that. You don't want to give the employee the idea that whatever they ask for, they're going to get. Now, in most cases, the doctor is not going to state that the employee must stay home. And if that's the case, if they just say this person can return to work with no restrictions, then you can mandate their return. Finally, Excuse me. The FFCRA states that employees whose doctor has told them they are at high risk of infection can stay home per their doctor's instruction and receive 2 weeks of paid leave. However, once that leave has expired, you should follow the guidelines for the ADA for further time off. So again, if somebody says, but my doctor said that I'm at a high risk of infection, you can say, I totally understand that. We want you to be safe. Take a copy of your job description to your doctor and come back to me with a list of requested accommodations, and we will see what we can do. If their doctor says, no, this person can go back to work, they're just fine, or they say she just needs to wear a mask at all times, or she just needs to wear gloves, or everybody in the hospital needs to wear a mask at all times, then you can mandate that individual come back to work. Now, if you are okay with the manager continuing to work from home, then what we would recommend is really heavily increasing her visibility with the team. So this could include having her start or ramp up the number of one-on-ones and routine check-ins that she does virtually. She can also start doing virtual team huddles every morning. Now, these can be either team by team, so she can have a team huddle with the technicians, and then a team huddle with the receptionist, and then a team huddle with the kennel attendants, or it could be the whole practice all at once. This is going to depend very greatly on your specific practice. If you've got a huge practice of 50 employees, it really doesn't make sense for those individuals to all have to meet with the practice manager all at the same time every single day. So in those cases, she can have a huddle with just the individual departments. We also recommend having the manager be really available and chatting throughout the day over a messaging app like Slack. So she should be asking each team member at least once a day, or messaging each team member at least once a day, posting a question of the day that everyone gets to provide feedback on. And these could be silly questions. They don't have to be, deep thought questions. They could be, what coffee shop do you miss the most right now? That kind of thing. You can also have her do other engaging content too. GIFs are a huge thing. A lot of companies do GIF contests where whoever posts the best but also most work appropriate GIF, they win the GIF of the day contest. So this isn't going to actually substitute her actually being in the practice, but what it's going to do is help to increase her visibility to the team and have the team feel that she's doing more than just sitting around at home. It may not get rid of the impression that she's sitting at home not doing anything, but at least you'll be doing your best. And if she does not comply with your requirements, then you can have a conversation with her about your expectations. The next question, I needed to furlough or lay off people, but now I need to recall them for my Paycheck Protection Plan loan forgiveness. What is the best way to do this? I think this is the most asked question of ours over the last 2 weeks. So let's go over a brief summary of how to recall employees. Now, we recently posted on COVID-19/iVET360.com a full document outlining exactly how you should recall employees. But we'll go over it very briefly here as well. So number one, you're going to want to create your recall list. Now, some practices are going to be able to bring back all of their furloughed employees at the same time, but a lot of practices are going to need to bring back furloughed employees in phases. So if you need to stagger out bringing back furloughed employees, you're going to need to choose a selection process for who you're going to bring back first. Just like when you started the process, you want to ensure that your selection process is non-biased and is very consistent. You don't want to set yourself up for any kind of discrimination claims later on. So common selection processes could be such things as the first one furloughed is the first one to come back, or they can be selected based off of their seniority of the practice or based off of their skill set. You don't want to base it off of who needs to come back first. For example, if you've got one employee who lives with their parents and another employee who has 4 children, you don't want to say, oh, I want to bring back the employee who has 4 children because she has a family to provide for, because again, depending on the demographics of your employees, that can set you up for some discrimination claims. Next, you need to actually recall your furloughed employees. So once you have your list together, you're going to want to prepare a recall letter for each individual that you'll be contacting prior to having the conversation with them. So there is at covid19.iVET360.com a recall letter to reference, but essentially when they are furloughed from a business, they're put on unpaid leave. So you're going to want to communicate the same things that you would communicate for any other leave. So you're going to want an employment offer, a return to work date, terms of employment, especially if they've changed, what has and has not changed as far as their role in the hospital. And this is an important one. A lot of hospitals have had to change how the hospital operates because of curbside service. And so people who might have been exam room assistants before might be people running animals to and from the front door. So you're going to want to make sure that you put in there what has changed as far as their role goes. Any changes to benefits, especially if any of benefits have changed or if their benefits are going to be changing based on a role change. And then any new policies or procedures that may have changed while they were out of the office. So we suggest reaching out to the employee via phone when you're actually recalling them, and then sending them an email with their recall letter and asking them to send it back to you signed. And then we put the employee back on the schedule. So once you have the employee signed recall letter of them accepting the recall, we need to put them back on the actual schedule. So make sure that their manager is scheduled to meet with them the first hour of their first shift back, just to review the practice's new safety protocols, especially if there are any personal protection equipment protocols, such as wearing a mask at all times or wearing gloves at all times or special sanitation, anything that might have been implemented while they were out of the office. This is also going to be a good time for the employee to read any handbook addendums that you might have created for them and to sign those documents in their personnel file. I know a lot of iVET360 hospitals have changed many things in their handbooks to reflect some of the changes that have had to be made in the COVID crisis. So this would be a good time to have them review those things. And then lastly here, schedule a time to check in with them during their first week back. There are still a lot of unknowns and a lot of uncertainties during this pandemic. So getting back to work is going to feel kind of weird for some people. Some people have gotten used to not doing anything at home all day. And people who've been allowed to work from home are going to have a little bit of shell shock going back to the hospital. So make sure to make it a point for the employee supervisor to check in with each recalled employee at least during the first week, if not weekly for a couple of weeks, just to see how they're doing and see how they're reacclimating to daily practice life. Our next question, what if my employee doesn't want to come back yet or is still concerned about their safety? So we kind of talked about this before, but if the employee has used up all of their federal and state leaves that are available to them, including their federal leave time through the FFCRA, it's really up to management as to whether they will approve for the employee to continue staying out on unpaid leave. Now, as I mentioned before, it's really important to note that in some states, like New Jersey, have put some guidelines in place as to how to handle employees that have refused to come back to work due to a fear of gathering and is choosing to self-distance. So make sure that you know your state rules before you make any hard and fast protocols in your practice. It's always really important to keep in mind that if you approve one person to stay out on unpaid leave, this needs to be an option for anyone else who has the same reasoning and requests to continue leave. So that means that if Sally says, I don't want to come back to work because I'm afraid of contracting coronavirus, and you say, okay, that's understandable, you've got 2 kids at home, but then Tina says, oh, I don't want to come back to work either. Even if Tina lives alone and isn't at risk of contracting it to anybody else, it doesn't matter. You still have to make that an option for her. So make sure that whatever you do for one person is something you would do for everybody. Otherwise, you are risking very serious discrimination claims, and those can be really hard to fight. Now, if they have expressed that they do not want to be recalled yet because they would like to continue collecting unemployment insurance while the additional stimulus of $600 a week is still applicable, and they don't have a qualifying reason to be on leave, and they've exhausted all of their federal and state leave, and your state does not have any special guidelines surrounding this, then the employee should be informed that this is a misuse of the unemployment insurance benefit and could be considered unemployment fraud. The employee can either accept the recall or the employee can submit the resignation to the practice. Now, if the employee chooses to decline the recall and resigns, that employee is most likely not going to qualify for unemployment anymore because they declined the work that was offered to them. So one way or another, they're going to lose their unemployment benefits. If they come back to work, they're going to lose their unemployment benefits. If they choose to resign, people who resign typically are not eligible for unemployment benefits. And if they choose to resign and you get an unemployment claim from them, we highly recommend fighting it, because you should not have your unemployment account affected because they have decided to try to fraud the unemployment department. So my employee has been on FFCRA expanded FMLA for childcare reasons. We recently found out that she has also been collecting unemployment. Is this allowed? This is a firm no, absolutely not. The FFCRA explicitly states that employees may not collect unemployment while they're on FFCRA leave. This is actually considered employment fraud. A very, very small handful of states may allow this in some cases, but the vast majority do not allow it for any case. So if this happens to you, we recommend reporting the employee to the unemployment board in your state. Now, every unemployment board or department has a fraud reporting mechanism. I recommend going to their website and just searching for it. You can even Command F and then search fraud, and it will come up somewhere. I recommend doing this for any employee that you find out is collecting unemployment unlawfully. This is going to sound like a really heavy-handed response, but it's going to help show the state that your practice did what it was supposed to do. And that's important. The last thing that you want to do is be an accessory to their fraud. And so if you do nothing and the state finds out that you knew about it, if they, for example, go through the individual's emails for whatever reason, or somebody tells them that you knew about it, you'd be surprised what your other employees know. You could actually be charged as an accessory and you can be fined big time for that. So I recommend just reporting them for fraud and letting the unemployment department deal with it. Now, you are welcome to tell the employee that you will be reporting them, but you're not required to do so. You're also welcome to tell the employee that what they're doing is considered unemployment fraud and see if they're willing to take action on their own. But again, you're not required to do so. Either way, don't let it slide. We always recommend that you make sure that you are always on the side of the law. A lot of lawyers will kind of come up with reasons to be a little bit lax with that, but HR professionals are here to try to prevent lawsuits against you. So we recommend just sticking with the law and reporting anyone who you believe is committing unemployment fraud. And that's it. We made it through another COVID-19 webinar. Like I mentioned, this one's a little bit shorter than the other ones, just because there haven't been quite so many new developments. Now, this is sadly the last regularly scheduled COVID-19 HR webinar. However, if there are significant developments that are going to affect how you manage your practice, we will be sure to schedule some more in the future. We're not going to leave you hanging or leave you all alone. I will say from the entire iVET360 HR and training team and the entire iVET360 team, it's been such a pleasure helping you help your practices through this time. We really hope that you have found these to be a valuable use of your time, so feel free to send us any feedback as it helps to direct us in the future. You're welcome to send an email to me. My email address is up on the screen there, hromano@iVET360.com. We're going to be hosting a special webinar that's going to focus solely on getting your hospital back on track after the COVID-19 restrictions are lifted. As I mentioned earlier in the webinar, this is something that every hospital should be thinking about right now. So we're going to have our marketing department discussing how to re-engage clients, our analytics department discussing managing your finances, and then us on our HR and training team discussing helping teams reintegrate and keeping them busy. Just like these HR webinars, there's no sales here or anything like that. We're just industry experts, and we're just trying to give you ideas to keep your practice moving along as smoothly as possible. So you can go to iVET360.com/webinar to sign up for this special event. Also, be sure to stay tuned to our COVID-19 resource page as we are regularly posting new content based on new developments. This is going to include daily data or daily industry data updates, marketing topics, and HR news and suggestions. So you can find this site at covid19.ivet360.com. And then finally, you can visit iVET360.com/HR for additional HR support regarding COVID-19. As always, thanks so much for joining us, and thank you so much for supporting your communities by keeping your doors open, however that is organized and however that looks at your practice. We know that it can be really thankless, but know that you have our entire company's support and admiration. Thanks again for joining us, and take care.